Today we're talking about the 5 plugins that I use in every mix, and we'll get to it right after this introduction. Welcome everybody, I'm Dan Spencer, and I'm the Audio Sorcerer, and this is the channel where I teach you how to perfect your audio recording, mixing, and mastering skills. So before we get to the video, make sure you guys smash that like button, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to know when I have new videos coming out. So with that being said, we are talking about the 5 plugins that I use in every mix. So let's get right into it and start with the Slate Virtual Tape Machine. Alright, so I got the Slate Virtual Tape Machine open here, and the reason why this is in my list of 5 plugins that are in every mix is because essentially I turn my Pro Tools into a tape signal flow. And what I mean by that is that this is on the first insert on all my individual tracks, and it is on the last insert on my master bus. And that's similar to a real live analog tape signal flow. And of course, the other reason is it just sounds amazing. So what I'm going to do for you guys to hear this here is I'm just going to play the chorus of this instrumental song with these virtual tape machines bypassed. And then the next time around, I will enable them, and you're going to hear a pretty good difference. So here we go. Alright, so that made quite a drastic change to the mix when we added it in on all the tracks. And what you should have noticed was through its saturation and harmonics that the mix got a lot bigger and fuller. And that's one of the reasons why I love this plugin. You just have to pretty much pop it on the tracks and it does its thing. So one thing you should have noticed was the snare drum got a lot thicker when we had this on. So if you guys didn't hear that, definitely go back and listen again in earbuds or headphones, and you'll see that it made quite a drastic difference, and a very positive one to say the least. So a couple tips for this plugin before we move on is that in the middle here, you got your VU meter, and you want to hit around 0 on the input. That's what the manufacturer says for optimal level for this plugin. You're going to get the best sound if you're hitting around 0. And then if you want to do the virtual, version of a analog tape signal flow, you're going to want to set this to 2-inch 16 track for all your individual tracks. But on your master fader here, you're going to want to set it to 1/2-inch 2-track. And that's going to emulate what you would see out in an analog real live signal flow. So that is the virtual tape machine. If you guys want to know a little bit more about it, I go over it in a little bit more detail in my series on how to mix a song from start to finish, which is popping up in the top right now. So check it out if you guys have time. So let's move on to our next plugin, which is the CLA MixHub. All right, so I got the CLA MixHub opened here. And I absolutely love this plugin. So this one also goes on all of my tracks, individual tracks. It doesn't go on my buses and it doesn't go on my master bus. But for all my individual tracks, it does. And essentially what I'm trying to do is recreate a digital SSL console. And this is the one that came out by CLA not too long ago. And I just think it sounds fantastic. And it's got a few additions to it, I think, that make it really cool. And one of my favorite ones is that you have 2 types of compressors. And if you hit this one here, you get the bluey. So that is essentially emulating a 1176 blue compressor, which is my absolute favorite compressor for vocals. So you have it built into this channel strip here, which is amazing. And if you have any other Waves plugins, you can actually insert them here by simply hitting the plus button, and you'll see plugin list. It's going to show all the different Waves EQs that you have in here. So that's really cool. It's kind of like a little Waves ecosystem. So one thing great about this EQ, the SSL EQ in general, is that it is, to me, the best sounding EQ for overdriven electric guitars. And you essentially can just adjust this frequency right here. This is basically the high shelf, and it defaults to 8 kilohertz here. You could simply just adjust this level here up, and it's gonna make your guitars have some bite and just sound way better. And same with adding in maybe a little about 3K here, which is the default, a little bit here. You can essentially just adjust these two knobs here and make your guitars go from like an 8 to a 10. That's how simple and amazing this EQ sounds in here. So, not to mention it comes with a gate built in, which is great for drums. And then it also has parallel compression built in. So we can actually blend it in. This is not on a real SSL console, so it's a little bonusy added in. And then you also have some width here, so you can do some stereo widening with this, which is pretty cool. So I love this. So I'm actually just going to let you hear this on this little lead arpeggio part I have in here, because this is the one that I needed to get to cut through the mix a little bit more, because since this song doesn't have vocals in it, it essentially is the lead part. And you can see that I made some boost right here. So I'm going to bypass it first, and then I'll bring it in, and then I'll bring it in and out so you can kind of hear the difference. So let's hear it. All right, so you guys should have definitely heard some more power in the upper mids, and that's what helps it cut through the mix. Though we were listening solo, if you guys remember back to when we heard it as a whole with the virtual tape machine example, it definitely cut through the mix really well. I wanted you guys to hear in solo now so you can actually hear those upper mids, hear those frequencies, and what the EQ is actually doing to the sound. And I gotta say that this plugin is one of my absolute favorites, and I use it in every session, hence the title of this video. So let's move on to my next plugin, which is the Slate FG Stress. All right, so we got the Slate FG Stress right here, which is modeled after the infamous distressor compressor limiter hardware. And this compressor just does amazing things to the snare drum, especially if you set it for distortion 3 right here, which adds a third harmonic to the sound. And overall, this just makes the snare drum much more punchy and much more thicker. It just does amazing things for it. So what we'll do is we'll listen to it bypassed first, and then I'll bring it in and you guys can listen to the difference. All right, here we go. All right, guys, you gotta admit, that sounds quite amazing. The snare drum is much more snappy now, punchy, and we even changed the timbre a bit by adding that third harmonic in, which just makes it stand out that much more. And we were hitting up to 9 dBs of gain reduction, and it did not have a negative effect on the snare at all. You know, a lot has to do with how we have our ratio and our attack and release set, but you can hit this thing pretty hard, and it'll still sound good. So I love this. If you guys have a snare drum and it's not quite there, put this on there and it will likely get you where you need to be. So if you guys like the Slate plugins here and you have the FG Stress, I do have a tutorial on every plugin within the VMR here. So there are a ton of plugins within here. So the link is popping up in the top right now. So if you guys have time, check out the tutorial and learn all about the Slate VMR. So let's move on to our next plugin, which is the CLA Mixdown. All right, so we got the CLA Mixdown here, And I use this on the master bus in all of my mixes. It is essentially my mix bus compressor, and there's some other stuff under the hood. So within here, you can do compression, EQ, you can add some console drive. For these CLA plugins, they're pretty simple. We just got to make sure this little LED right here, it's not lit up now because I'm not playing any music, is hitting in the yellow. And that means that you're hitting the proper input level that this plugin wants to see, which then will make the compressor and everything work properly. So it's kind of cool. It's very easy to use. So I normally either use just the default or the start me up here. And that will either be with all these faders strictly even at unity at 0, or how it is now where I have a little bit of treble boost here, which is pretty typical on your mix bus to boost some of the high end. So what we will do, so you can hear what this sounds like, is we will listen to it bypass first, and then we will bring it in. So here we go. All right, so this did a great job of gluing our mix together. And of course, it brightened it up just a smidge because we have the treble fader up. And it essentially inflated it and made it just a little bit more punchy. So it did everything you could want from a mix bus compressor. And this CLA Mixdown is my go-to one. So with that being said, let's move on to my last plugin, which is the Slate FG Bomber. All right, so we got the Slate FG Bomber right here, and this always goes after my CLA Mixdown on my master bus here. And this is essentially a sort of saturation. And those who know me know that I love saturation. I love tape saturation, tube saturation, pretty much all types of saturation, because I think that they color the sound in such a positive way and make it more surreal. Because let's be honest, clean sound is boring. So that's why I love saturation. And I really love this on the mix bus because it, to me, inflates the sound. It like doesn't do something negative. Like sometimes when you do something to the whole entire mix, it can have a very negative connotation on it. But this just adds something. It feels like it wraps around the mix like a blanket and just makes it amazing. So let's actually listen to it bypass first, and then we'll bring it in. So here we go. Alright, so I thought the FG Bomber did a great job enhancing this mix. So if you guys were listening in headphones, you should have heard the outside of the mix enhancing a bit, getting a little bit bigger, maybe even a little bit wider. It could be deceiving, but that's the point. It's enhancing it in a very positive way. So it is very subtle, but as I always preach to you guys, we're just trying to make very minimal enhancements and adjustments, so together they create the bigger picture, the big sound that we're going for. So that's why I love this plugin here and why it will probably always be on my master bus. So those are my 5 plugins that exist in every mix that I do and every session that I create. So I hope you guys liked this tutorial. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe because I love making this content for you, and hit that notification bell to know when I have new videos coming out. So with that being said, until the next video, I'll see you guys later, and peace out.